forward for the book. And Martin is the man who is credited with creating, discovering, designing the cell phone. So he was honored that year, and I was the last speaker before lunch. And everybody else was like, there were scientists and psychologists, and there were a few other educators, but very interesting people, and everybody was very serious and stood behind the podium. And of course, when I spoke, I had the mic, and I was in front, and I was talking to everybody like this, and I was all excited. And my presentation was really about how can you get students to see how they can be creative and think about creativity all the time. Think creatively all the time, because there's this misconception in the world that creativity is what you do before you do other things. You brainstorm, you get creative, and okay, now let's get down to business and work. And I'm like, no, you can think creatively all the time. Thinking creatively is secretly analytical thinking at its best, right? So that's what I wanted them to understand. So after my presentation, Martin Cooper comes up to me, and he's like this tall. I think he used to be this tall, but he's this tall. He's almost 90 now, and he wasn't at the time. This was 2013, and he had very thick, pure white hair. And he said to me, "You changed my mind." I said, "Great." I'm like, "What are you talking about?" And he took about 5 minutes to talk to me, and he said to me that he had always been of the opinion that creativity was brainstorming and the thing you did before, what I just said, and that I had changed his mind. He said, "You taught me something." And I'm standing there in one of those moments where you're going, this isn't really happening. It was very cool. And I had a lot of fun talking to him. And then that was over, and we did the rest of the conference. And then the final night of the conference, there was a ball in a castle. And you could spend $50 extra, which I did because I really wanted to go to the ball in the castle. I mean, you read about it your whole life, and I didn't get to go. And I go to the ball in the castle, and it's very dressy and amazing, and people are wearing weird, creative, lovely things, or very, like this kind of Euro, exactly perfect kind of outfits, all mixed up. And it's the ceremony to award the Marconi Prize. And we sat far, far from all the other people, but we still got to be there. And before the prize was awarded, we walked around and talked to everyone, and I wanted a picture with Martin Cooper, and somebody I was sitting at the table with, his name was Fabrizio, said, "Come with me, I'll get you a picture." So we went up, and as soon as Martin Cooper saw me, he said, "I called my son. I told him what you taught me." I'm like, okay, this is real. So fast forward, I went to Florence because a friend was studying in Florence, and I visited her, and then I came back through Frankfurt. It was about the tickets and the cost of the tickets, and I never saw Germany. I just saw the airport. And I don't like elevators, and the only way you could get upstairs was the elevator, and I had to wait for people to go on the elevator so I could go in with them, because then it was crazy. But anyway, on the way home from Frankfurt, flying in the plane, I sat next to an engineer in the food industry. And he said, "So what brought you to Europe?" He was from Hawaii. He had a much longer trip home than I did. He was a very interesting young man, and we started to talk, and I told him about my presentation, and he said, "Engineers need that. They don't think that way, and they need that. The good ones do, but their training isn't like that." And I thought, I should write a book. You would have thought this would have occurred to me previously, but it hadn't ever occurred to me to write a book about creativity. So I'm sitting in the plane, and I tell him the story I just told you. And I said, "I wonder if Martin Cooper would write a foreword for me." And he said yes, and that's very cool. All right, so here we go. So here are two things that Martin Cooper said in the foreword. One is, "Cinse Bonino convinced me that my concept of the creative person was simply wrong." I'm like, oh my God, why did you say it that way? But that's okay. "That creativity was not the province of an exclusive few, and most importantly, that the ability to be creative can be learned and enhanced," which I completely believe because we did it all the time in class. And my students often say to me, I use that thing, I use this thing that they learned. More than that, I think they just got more confidence in themselves. They would walk into class, some of them like this. You're going to teach me to be creative. I'm so creative already, and you're old. So there are definitely some people, some students like that. The other students that walk in and they're like, I hope she can do it, I hope she can do it, I hope she can do it. And then other students who were just drooling and excited and believed that it was going to work. So this is what he said. So again, Cinse theorized that day in Italy that, don't you like that sentence, that anyone can learn to be creative, and then went on to explain that being creative does not exclude the abilities to be methodical and sensible. And this is the thing, when you say creativity, people think of things like crocheting a cover for the extra roll of toilet paper that you put on the back of the tank, right? It's like, no, I mean, that's fine. But no, that's not everything that creativity is. So here we go. So I'm just jumping around within the book. So in the introduction, many of us wish we could unlock our own creative potential and become more like those dazzling, quick-witted, so-called out-of-the-box thinkers. But some of us suspect the genetic lottery determines our level of creativity. We worry our creativity capacity is not only predetermined, but also set in stone. This could cause us to doubt our ability to increase our creativity. So, in the book there are 4 steps and 2 keys. And I want to tell you about the 4 steps. This book explains how to combine learning principles, creative methods, and intentional awareness. See, that sounds a lot like my talk, right? To improve your ability to be creative in useful and productive ways. You will become familiar with each of the 4 steps of the creative process. Notice, explore, connect, and choose. All of these steps are important. There's a whole bunch of words in between what I'm reading. All of these steps are important because if we become overly focused on our end product and hurry through the identification of the conceptual components we need, we won't truly understand what it is we're attempting to create. Without this full conceptual understanding, we might become attracted to things or parts of these things that only partially connect to what we need in order to be successful in our creative endeavor. We must learn to refuse to settle for what is falsely enticing or merely clever. Otherwise, we will end up with something flashy but unfinished. But even bad choices sometimes end up being instructive. They can propel us past a solution that only partially fits our needs towards an elegant solution that satisfies our needs in an effective and perhaps even a unique manner. So now I'm going to tell you about a pun that I came up with that my son doesn't like, but I usually will. So I was sitting in Nunion's having breakfast the other day, and I wanted to come up with a pun and imagine it as a painting on the wall, because you know I was sitting there eating, so what else are you going to do? And I thought of what's in a place like Nunion's, a cafe. Well, there are rolls, there are eggs, you know, I went through the whole thing. And then I thought about buns. And I realized, bun dance. It's a great pun, a bun dance, right? There's this bun, and of course it's this really clever bun, so it looks kind of like a butt, and it's doing a dance, and it's a bun dance. Now, that's a funny idea, but it gets better. It gets better if you put a whole lot of buns doing the bun dance at the same time, because then it actually is a bun dance. And if you turn the bun sideways, so that right? So those last few things took this simple, stupid little pun to a really special place, at least in my heart, right? So after I did this, and after I told Richie about it, he was like, yeah, it's all right. Because I have to be fair to him, I framed it as the best pun I had ever created. I was like, no. Okay. Then I saw this video, I don't know how many of you have seen it, of the Asian teacher teaching the little preschoolers to wipe their butts. Okay, so this is, she must have heard about my abundance, that's all I can say. There are a bunch of little chairs lined up, and each chair has 2 balloons on the back of it that are round. She has toilet paper in her hand. All the little kids are sitting on their chairs facing her. She's sitting in a chair looking away from them. She gets the toilet paper and she wipes between the 2 balloons. Then she folds it over and she wipes again. This is genius. Other than the fact if a balloon broke, think about it. But it's genius. It's genius because she thought conceptually. She didn't stop with, well, I can't actually show them myself, you know, wiping my butt after I go to the bathroom. I love that somebody's coming in out of this and so I need to come up with a way to show them all the things I'm trying to teach them. Where they're wiping, how they're wiping, what to do with the tissue. All of these things got covered because she thought conceptually. She didn't come up with, I have to do it exactly a certain way. All right, moving on. So, in order to be